Stars General Manager Jim Nill, Head Coach Pete DeBoer to take your questions. Once again, please raise your hand and wait for the microphone. We'll start right side, front row with Nick.
I have one for each of you. For Jim, after back-to-back conference finals, what did you think your team needed? And then how do you think your changes have played out? And then Pete, Gretzky was in your room after last game. Got some anecdotes about that. I wondered if you had an interaction with him or he had any words for you.
Yeah, well, first of all, you never take the situation we're in for granted. This is not an easy place to get to, and to do it over 3 years is not easy to do. There's some teams that we just beat could be sitting in these chairs right now, so we respect that a lot. And I think the biggest thing is our players respect that because of the job that Pete and his staff have done. They've made them understand that, and it's. When you go through this, you got to go through these pains to win. It's too hard of a championship to win. The NHL playoffs are too hard, and you have to go through these pains. There's going to be down times, and you learn from those. And I think we got a hardened group, we got a very resilient group, and they want more of this, and they've learned from it each time they've gone. And let's see if this is one of the last steps.
Yeah, well, first, what a great honor to have the greatest player, of all time come down after the game and say hello. I got a chance to spend some time with him at the Four Nations, which was extra special. I mean, that's my era. That's the guy. We all grew up watching, and he's a special guy when you get him one-on-one or in a coach's room or behind the scenes. He really, you can see his passion for the game. He could sit and talk hockey and tell stories all night. And, did he say anything? What if I told you he was hoping that Dallas would win? Do you think that'd be headlines in Edmonton? He didn't. I would never say. He would never say that, and I would never put him in that spot. But he was very respectful, of our group and the job we had done to that point. I think we all understand his allegiance to Edmonton and appreciate that. So he never went beyond that, but it was great to see him.
Left side, front row.
Hey, Jim. Pete talks a lot about the guys in the room at the start of round one not getting enough respect. You're sitting in your office after the regular season knowing you don't have Miro, you don't have Robo. What was your confidence level going into that, and then what have you learned about your group over the first two rounds here?
Well, all season, this season, it was a battle all year. We lost last year. Great run, you lose last year. You're coming back to do it again, and it's not easy. You got to. Nobody cares what you did the previous year, so you start all over again. We have the trip to Finland. It's a grind. The season was a grind. The schedule. December, you lose Seguin. And he's gone for most of the rest of the season. Will you get him back before or in the playoffs sometime? You're hoping, but you don't know how that process is going to go. And then on January 28th or whatever it was, we lose probably our best player, one of the best players in the league, Miro Heiskanen. And you're going through that battle. You're going through the Four Nations. Some players played in the Four Nations. And it was just a battle, but I get back to our guys rose to the occasion all the time. And so we were pretty confident where we were at. We went through really our roughest stretch at the end of the year, and we all know the talk about that. You lose 6, 7, 8 games in a row. We can't seem to get our footing, but there's just an inner confidence with our group. With the structure we play in, the way our coaches prepare for it, there was never a panic in the room, and that's what I like about our group. Now, were we concerned? Yes. We don't want to lose 7, 8 games in a row. Yes, there was concerns, but our guys stuck with it. They've stuck. They continue to stick with it. We bend and we don't break.
Right side, front row, Tracy.
Jim, this is for you. With Jake Oettinger, just how have you watched him grow and develop, and especially with the past two conference finals? And also, is he one of the most, if not the most laid-back goaltender you've ever dealt with in your time in the league?
Well, he's definitely one of the most laid back. He's just a he's a very mature young man. He's got a great head on his shoulders. just a great outlook in life. You know, his family's done a great job bringing up a great young man, but he's been a great story, great development story for us. You know, we draft him, under 18 program. He's going to college, going to play at college. He did that, and then COVID hit. We've got a lot of guys on our team that are great COVID stories, and and he's one of them. He comes to the bubble as a third goalie. Ben Bishop gets hurt right away. We throw Jake into the Wolves pretty well. I think he played the one game in Colorado and just got blitzed in that. But he just always keeps his head on his shoulder. We get through the COVID. He's got to go back. He's been with the NHL team for a couple of years because of COVID, because of circumstances, but he hasn't played much. And now we got to send him down. And that was a tough discussion to say, Jake, you got to go down and play. And he wasn't happy, but he dealt with it the right way, very mature, went down there, did what he's supposed to do. We got injuries up top. He came in and never looked back. And it just shows the mature level of him. For a goalie at his age to be doing what he's doing right now, it's a great story, and it just shows you how much more there is there for him. That's what excites us. I think he's just touching his potential. At his age, usually goalies, they're 28, 29, 30 when they start to hit their most potential, and he's there right now. And but a great young man, one of the leaders of our team, which is rare too for a goalie. I think he's one of those guys you could probably put a letter on if you wanted to. He's that mature, and we're just very fortunate to have him.
Right side, fourth row.
Hey, Coach. Running a story on Tyler Seguin. I'm sure you saw him play in Boston early in his career, but what were your first impressions of him as a Dallas Star, and what has he meant to this team in your time here?
Great question. My perception coming into this job of what Tyler Seguin was and what the reality was were totally different. My perception was that he was a guy that had put up points, terms like leadership, maturity, kind of didn't go, when you talked about Tyler Seguin, until I got here. And those would be the first words out of my mouth, in my dealings with him over the last 3 years. I think he's been a fantastic leader for our group, showing great maturity. He's at a totally different stage in his life. He's married. He's got kids. He's won, but he hasn't won in a long time, and that's his priority. And he's willing to do anything, take any role in order to help try and get us there. And so that's the reality of my dealings with him, and really pleasantly surprised.
Left side, second row, Mike.
Hey, Jim. As a scout, how do you assess Miro, and what have you seen in these 3 games so far? It seems like he impacts everything in the game.
It's nice to have him back. No, you know what? Got to give it a lot of credit. First, I'll give credit to the player. Not an easy rehab. When you have the surgery he had, and then the rehab process, and he's sitting there. He's one of the leaders of our team, and he's watching games every night. He wants to get back there, but there's a process to it, and he went through the process. I give my credit to our training staff. They did a great job. They stuck with him. They're patient with him. Pete and I, every day we're coming in saying, when's he going to play? We want him out there now. We're pushing. And they're saying, nope, it's not the right time. His doctor that did the surgery did a great job. He kept us at bay also. And but it just shows you how good of a player he is. To bring him in, the coach staff did a great job, kept his minutes down as much as you can. Because what happens when you get into a game and the game starts, you're a player now. You miss time, that doesn't matter. That's all. I know how coaches think. I'd be the same way. Once you're in the game, you're a player. And to keep his ice minutes down, Pete, Lane Nazardine, they did a good job. It'd be hard, you want to let that horse go. And they managed him well. And I thought the last game, that was the Miro Heiskanen. He was, we're into the third round of the playoffs. Teams are starting to they're worn out. They're getting tired. He looked like he was the fresh body out there. He's just starting to play. He was breaking some ankles out there. And he's such a wonderful player to watch, just the way he glides around and how he thinks and moves the puck.
Left side, fourth row.
Hi, Jim. Can you talk about John Klingberg a little bit? Obviously was here for a long time, and he's had a long journey back to the ice. Can you talk about him getting healthy again and running into him this deep in the playoffs?
Yeah, no, I'm so happy for John. John and I got a great relationship. He was a big part of our team for many years here. Saw him develop as a young player. Situations happened, but we've always maintained a great relationship, and that I respect him so much. And to see what he's gone through, not an easy surgery, what he went through, and to be able to come back, and now he's making an impact for them. And so I'm excited for him. And like I said, he's a great player, and he's a player that we're going to have to watch closely.
Right side, second row.
This question's for both of you. I guess brief response is fine, but the nature of the relationship between both of your roles, there has to be a lot of trust going in both directions. In a year like this, with all the adversity that you all faced, what kept that trust strong through that adversity this year?
Well, I think that there's a mutual respect between us. And, one thing when I interviewed Pete, one thing I talked about is I'm bringing him to be the coach. He's got to make the final decisions. It's his call. And if I'm going to be sitting there, it's not that we don't have healthy discussions and probably have some unhealthy discussions. That's life. But in the end, when the game's going to start, Pete needs to know that I got his back, that I agree with his decision. And that's how we've operated. And his resume speaks for itself. How can I not respect that? What a great resume, what he's done, and how he's handled it, and how a great family man. And I got so much respect for that.
Left side.
On my end, just to finish that, is I think when Jim and I have conversations, there's no agenda, other than winning. Listen, he has a wider view of the organization than I do, development, who's coming up, draft picks, things like that. Mine is much more narrow, but our agendas are the same. It's winning a Stanley Cup, and that's critical.
Left side, first row.
Jim, I know when you were adding players during the midseason, you weren't looking at Finns. You were just looking for good players, but you added a couple more Finns to this team. Talk about the impact the 5 Finns have had for you guys, but also just there's 12 of the guys in the conference finals this year, and what the players from there mean.
Well, they've done a great job of developing players over in Finland. Yeah, you got to tip our hat to the Finnish Federation. Done a great job, and I think the most important thing, we know they're good players, but they're just really good human beings, and it's how they conduct themselves on and off the ice. They all have different personalities. Mikael Granlund's kind of the grandfather of the group. It's neat to see him. He's a quiet man, but he comes in there, and you can just see the respect they have for him. These younger guys saw him. He's been the leader of Finnish hockey for a long time, and you got Miro Heiskanen, the up-and-coming star, but he's quiet. Esa Lindell, quiet guy, but he's not quiet. He's got his own way of saying things. You got Rupe Hintz, a little more flamboyant in how they conduct themselves. And it just kind of goes on, and they're just, they're great people, and they're very committed to winning. They play the game the right way. When you talk about Finnish players, they play the game the right way. They've been well coached. They understand both ends of the ice, and like I said, I got so much respect for them. And we talked about that trip we had over to Finland. What a great acknowledgement for them to be able to go over there and show the Finnish people, here we are, but we respect our country. It was just such a great trip for them. I know a little bit to get by and stuff. All that really matters to me is salmon soup.
On my end with those guys, this is the golden age of Finnish hockey. If you look at the last decade, those guys have won a lot of tournaments, under 18, World Juniors, World Championships. They know how to win. They have those winning habits, and that's what makes them easy to coach, easy to play.
We'll take a few more. Left side, second row.
Jim, you had talked about the end of the season and going into the playoffs, and there was some concern there. Did it remind you at all, or has this reminded you at all of what you went through in Detroit back in 2002, because you had something similar and then eventually going on to win the Stanley Cup?
Yeah, when you're in those situations, you're looking for every straw you can grasp to a little bit of hope. So we talked about that. I shared that story with the coaches and with some of the players. That year, I think the last 15 games. I think at Detroit we only won 2 or 3 games, and started the playoffs first round against Vancouver, lost the first 2 games at home. We were reeling. We were in trouble. And it's one of the best teams ever assembled. You know, Luke Robitaille and Brett Hull on the fourth line, and Igor Larionov. That's how good we were. Here you're down 2-0 going in the playoffs, and just it's crazy how things happen. Nick Lidstrom took a slap shot from center ice. Goalie mishandled it, went in the net, and we never looked back. And so, you know, when you're in those situations, you're looking for some experiences, something to grasp onto. We were looking for any inspiration we could find at that time.
We'll take 2 more left side, first row.
Pete, I think I remember you joking that you were going to hide Wyatt Johnston in your car if Jim decided to send him back after that 9-game tryout. It feels the way he's developed, it feels like it's been 10 years since then. What's maybe the most underrated development you've seen from Wyatt Johnston?
I think his leadership. He's turned into a leader in our group despite his age. There's very few guys in the league, especially playing on veteran teams that have a chance to win, where a young player, you know, has a leadership presence in the room and on the ice and on the bench. And he's developed that really quickly within our group. So, you know, I'm not sure I've seen that before for a young guy that young on this type of team. And it comes naturally. He hasn't, you know, it's not forced. He hasn't pushed his way in. It's just who he is. So, you know, that's great for the future leadership of this organization.
Last one, right side, fifth row.
Pete, you've talked about having to have difficult conversations with this group at times and the way they responded. How has your approach or your style evolved, your coaching approach throughout this year?
Yeah. You know, I think patient, you try and be patient, you try and have composure, you try and be the calming voice in the room. You know, until you lose 7 or 8 in a row, it's like Mike Tyson, right? Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the nose. So, you know, so definitely, I think it was a lot of work this year down the stretch, and I've shared that with Jim from our entire coaching staff. You know, trying to keep the train on the tracks, and when it got off the tracks, get it back on as quickly as possible without losing it. Because when you see it in pro sports all the time, but you know those are tentative situations. When you start losing multiple games in a row, you know 5 can turn into 10, can turn into the end of your season really quickly. You know we pulled just about every trick we had in the bag out to try and keep it going.